Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and it is Saturday, November 22nd. And for any of you who watched the last video, obviously my new comic book day was pushed back due to a family funeral. It went well. Service was really good. I am partial because I was helping out with that and doing part of it. But it all went well. Everyone was pleased. It was good to see family, even under the circumstances. We're all very sad, but obviously, you know, getting through it. So to the few people who reached out that listened and sent their condolences, we really appreciated that. And you know, now we're back to it. So there was no bike ride to the comic book shop this week. Obviously, we didn't really have time. Had to get you know, going. So that was already taken care of, and then so we kind of mashed the comic book trip and a trip up to our toy store, our favorite little toy store in our neighborhood. So I was going to toss that here, and so here is like probably 10 seconds of a trip to the comic book shop and our favorite toy store. All right, so now we're back. I've got my tea. I've got the toys that I picked up, which ties into one of the stories that I'm going to talk about. And quickly, we're going to go through the new comics I picked up for this Wednesday. And good news is unlike most weeks where I don't read any of the new books on Wednesday, I have had a little bit of downtime to read a few of them before I went to sleep, so I'll go over those. So first up, the number one book that I was most excited for this week, I did not get to it yet, and you will see why, is Spider-Man Holiday Spectacular #1. You will find out over the course of the next month and a week that I am a sucker for Christmas specials, Christmas-themed issues. I have stuff that I will talk about at the end of this episode that I'm reading that, while not Christmas-specific, like this would be, mean a lot to me at this season, and so I kind of bust out some of that stuff. Kind of put a pause on some of the other stuff that I'm reading to while the trees are up. There's one in the comic book room down here, and obviously one upstairs, which is, you know, not to toot my own horn, but it's a very good looking tree. It's got like almost 6,000 lights on it because I'm crazy about the lights. It takes me a whole day to do. I'll post a picture at some point during one of the Christmas videos. Might even do one in front of the tree. So anyways, yeah, this holiday spectaculars are right up my alley. I have, I'm gonna have to move some stuff here. These are other fantastic ones that I bust out every year. The old giant holiday grab bags are always super fun. The treasury size edition ones. I usually have these like kind of like placed underneath the tree down in the comic book room until you know, we start putting presents under it anyways. So I have not read this because I'm waiting for some hot chocolate and it to be it's close to being dark because it gets super dark early now, but I want the whole experience of the tree. Next book, which I did read, and it was fantastic. One World Under Doom #9. I like, if you've been along for this little ride with me on starting this channel, you know that Ryan North's Fantastic Four is my #1 book at the moment. And One World Under Doom has been an event that has absolutely delivered. The tie-ins, I will say, didn't do a ton for me. The one, if I were to recommend, was the Doom Academy, like the Strange Academy spinoff, but where they went to Doom's Academy. I really, really loved Strange Academy while that series was out, and felt the same way about Doom Academy. That was probably my #1 of the One World Under Doom. But the main story has been fantastic. The last issue obviously ended on a heartbreaking cliffhanger, and this one carried this on and was just a great Doctor Doom story. It ends fantastically. Really feel like giving it away for anybody that might be intrigued into watching this. Although I guess, spoiler, they do move Doom off the board, but if you think that is permanent, then MCU synergy next year is going to prove otherwise. So while I imagine that Doom will be moved off the board for a few months, I expect he'll be back in a big, big way. But the wrap-up to this was fantastic. It was a really good Doom story. Definitely, as far as like recent events, I've been pretty... I liked, what was that, Blood Hunt? I liked Blood Hunt, even though I'm not a big vampire guy. I liked the end of that, which obviously, like, Sorcerer Supreme Doom. Like, I thought the very end of that made the entire event for me worth it. But beyond that, I've kind of been let down by a lot of line-wide events. And this was one where I was like, I am not. But I am slowly, after 35 years of reading comic books, learning that maybe I should stop buying every single tie-in, which I'll talk about in a second. So a book that I did read and was pleasantly surprised with, and it's you know, they know how to get me, because X-Men of Apocalypse, you know, 30 years ago, was it 30 years ago? Yeah. Dang. 30 years ago, Age of Apocalypse was kicking off at this time period. This was when Legion Quest was going on, where Legion went back in time and accidentally killed Xavier leading into the Age of Apocalypse. So this is sort of like hitting that nostalgia button for me, just by taking place at this year. The Zero issue, I was a little bit frustrated with it because Forge was alive in it and shouldn't be. I mean, technically, and I do have some issues with them. I enjoyed this issue, but occasionally I do get frustrated with them going to the Age of Apocalypse well, much like I get frustrated with the time travel well when it comes to the X-Men. You know, Days of Future Past worked, so let's constantly, you know, it's like that in Dark Phoenix Saga. Like, let's constantly go back to the Phoenix, and let's constantly show dystopian futures, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But they sort of course corrected on the Forge thing and explained it away in a satisfactory way for me. And then kind of, like, I will admit that just the idea of the Age of Apocalypse X-Men going up against that time period's, like, era of X-Men really did it for me. You know, I mean, I was like, I read this the night of the funeral and was sort of emotionally drained that night, and so this was kind of just a warm blanket of comic goodness. And, you know, Age of Apocalypse X-Men versus X-Men, that's a blast. And this, like, Simone DeMaio character, I think is his name. Yeah, so Simone DeMaio. I'm sort of unfamiliar with his work other than in this series, and it kind of, like, harkens back to the 90s in, like, the best, not in a, like, not the bad aspect of the 90s, but a portion of the 90s that I absolutely adored. So it did it for me. I was all about it, and really enjoyed the story, and I'm definitely much more excited for issue number 2 than I was for issue number 1 after the Zero issue. So up next is a book that I have been loving, and then this one slammed the brakes hard on that because I read Unbreakable X-Men number 2, and while I was a champion for issue number 1, issue number 2 did nothing for me, and this was one of the highlights of the Age of Revelation for me, and this wasn't great, which means that right now I'm sort of just holding on to Amazing X-Men, which makes me think that this probably... They announced, and, like, I saw it for a split second, and I've been far too busy to read too much into it or even what it is. I know I'll order it. But they announced, like, this X-Men United book where it sounds like they're trying to, like, get the school back, which I'm all for because I think the school is a very important part of it. But when I saw that announcement for the split second that I was able to take a peek at it, the thing that kind of frustrated me about that is like Amazing X-Men is like showing what this series should be about, and the rest of the titles are not. They're just kind of like doing this thing in like not that interesting of an alternate timeline. And I said it before in another video where I feel like there was that Age of X-Man that they did right before the Hickman thing, and it just sort of felt like treading water. And like, I'm not new enough to comics to not realize that that's happening. I've been, you know, and I get it's cyclical. I understand that. But this just sort of like, I think now knowing that they're doing this like X-Men United thing, I think it would have been a much more interesting story if they just left it to the X-Men, Jed McKay's X-Men book, and have our Cyclops go into the future, have their Cyclops come back to our time, and try to fix it just in that one book. And you know, my thought here is like that Scott realizes that this, and I this sort of all swirling around in my head because I also read, if you watched the last video, Grandma got me something that I bought with a gift card that she got me for the first Christmas that was in the family, was Battle of the Atom, and I read that, and it dealt with the schism, and it was just like, oh man, here I am, you know, almost 14 years later, and it's still the same thing, where it's like there's two combating schools, two lines of thought in the X-Men, and I was like, they should be united, and then, boop, you know, X-Men United is announced, and I'm like, maybe what they should have done, instead of a line-wide event for 3 months that isn't that great, they should have just stuck with that story in Amazing X-Men, made it 3 issues, tell the story of like a Ghost of Christmas Past thing where Scott has to go into the future Scott has to come into the past and realize that the X-Men need to be united. That this dueling, angry at each other, like I said, this Battle of the Atom thing I'll get into, where like it's just tiresome. Like that aspect of the X-Men being kind of split, the schism, that thing, we've done it before. It was boring then, it's boring now. Get them back together. This did not need to be a line-wide event. It could have been a 3-issue story in one of the titles to explain that like the X-Man, Scott Summers, realizes that like we got to put our squabbles aside and we need to be united in a post-Krakoan world for mutants for us to survive. Far more interesting than a bunch of books that aren't really doing much for anybody. But that's just me. What do I know? I don't work for Marvel. I just buy all their crap. Amazing Spider-Man 980. I'm loving Joe Kelly's run. This is like, it keeps on kind of flip-flopping back and forth between Space Peter and then Norman in the suit and Ben playing the role of Peter. And this was just a really good like character study of Norman, realizing how difficult Peter's life must have been while doing the split, like while being Peter and being Spider-Man at the same time. It's really great May moments in this, and I'd be all for them kind of redeeming Ben in this, because I feel like the chasm, like Krakoan era Zeb Wells stuff that they did where he became that like evil version of himself is just you know, I get that there are people that don't like Ben Reilly and don't like the Clone Saga, but it's interesting because kind of getting into comics when I did, being an X-Men guy, but like dabbling in other stuff, some of my fondest memories of my early reading of Spider-Man were Ben stories. And I prefer Peter, but like I have a soft spot in my heart for Ben Reilly, just because of it. And I get it, it's nostalgia, and I know that there's people out there that are like, oh, you shouldn't get hooked on the nostalgia bait, and I understand that, but like you know, I don't necessarily like it, because this is something that I've had to deal with as like a Gambit fan. Like, I grew up loving Gambit, and there was a time period, like 10, 12, 13 years, where that character just got dunked on, because it was a bunch of guys that came into the era of writing that didn't grow up with the character, thought he was lame because he was 90s, and they did everything in their power to kind of crap on the character. And I don't think that that's the best way. Like, if you don't like a character and you're not going to add to it, there's no need to just like subtract from something because it's not your cup of tea. Just move the character off the board and don't bother with it. Save it for somebody that actually wants to elevate the character. But again, what do I know? So let's see. That was it for books that I have actually read. So these are just the rest of the stuff that I picked up. Captain America #5. I've been enjoying this, but like I said, I'm still very thrown by the fact that, like, and I mean, I guess I get the sliding time scale. It just felt like it was clunking me over the head of like, and I think once we move, like, I love Chip Zdarsky as a writer, and this has been a fun story, but the drop in Cap as though he got pulled out of the ice, post 9/11 was weird for me. I understand why it's happening, but I think it needed to be structured for me. I know other people are loving it. For me, I needed a clearer, somebody needed to bonk me over the head that, like, hey, this is taking place in the past, because it doesn't feel like it to me, but I imagine that this ends and then Cap will be in our present, dealing with, like, it'll be like he, I don't know how to explain this, where I'm just like, it feels weird to have a past Cap story that took place during a time period where he had been established in the Marvel Universe for 60 years. I get why it's an interesting take. I saw a quick word balloon interview with Chip Zdarsky, where, he was talking about that was they had different Cap eras throughout the history of Cap, which I get, and there was never kind of a new Cap era post 9/11. So it is an interesting thing. I think I'm going to go back and read this entire story arc kind of together, not month to month, and I'll probably get much more out of it. But I love that creative team. I am on board for that book, and I hope that it continues to get better and better for me. Up next, Radioactive Spider-Man. I enjoyed the first issue. This is probably number 3 in my ranking of the books, and number 2 would be, now it's Amazing X-Men as number 1. Number 2 is Unbreakable X-Men, but I didn't enjoy the second issue, so I'm hoping that maybe this one is great in the second issue and moves up to spot number 2. One can hope. I got high hopes for this one because I enjoyed the first issue a lot more than I thought I would. I almost actually didn't pull this comic, but I think I enjoyed the Wendigo Wolverine story, and as you can see, Nightcrawler is on the cover, so I imagine that he will be featured in this issue, and he is my favorite character, so I'm all about that. Omega Kids. X-Men Book of Revelation. I feel even less about this than I do Omega Kids. And then, well, I enjoyed all the Godzilla 1 issues, and I've so far been enjoying Godzilla Destroys the Marvel Universe. I am not a big enough Godzilla fan to carry on. Like, it's been enjoyable, but for $4.99, I could put that money towards back issues or something else. So I know they like announced some like continuation after this, like Infinity Roar or something like that, which, like, funny name, but not particularly doing much for me. So those are the new books. If you watched the last video where I discussed what happened to our family, I talked about the first Christmas that I spent with my wife's family. how her grandmother and grandfather, obviously they're mine and they're Henry's great-grandparents, got me a gift card to my comic shop, which I thought, it moved me greatly that they listened and cared enough and thought enough to do that. And so at the time, X-Men Battle of the Atom in the hardcover edition had come out, so I picked that up. And I loved Wolverine and the X-Men. I have the first time I ever got a letter printed in a comic book was Wolverine and the X-Men #2. I have it framed over there. And I love Chris Bachalo, and I like Jason Aaron, and I liked the idea of them building a new school. I liked the time-displaced X-Men. I like Bendis as a writer. But I enjoyed this immensely at the time that it came out. I have not read it since it came out, but I read it because I was like, oh, wrapped myself up in the Afghan that she made me, and gave this a read, when I was feeling sad. And there's stuff about it I absolutely love. And I remembered, like, this obviously deals with, this is where they start, like, the original 5 has to go back because it's starting to mess up the timeline. And there's lots of time travel elements to this, and there's, like, a team of future X-Men that's introduced, and they're interesting, and then there's a twist with that, and then there's another, like, real future X-Men team that's interesting, and I like those characters, and kind of those, like, what if this happens and these characters become the X-Men and some of them get kind of like mashed together. That just makes me think of like playing with my toys, and that hits particular buttons for me that I love. So this is right up my alley. There are numerous flaws in this that I overlooked first go around. It's, it's full of like Bendis speak where like, I laughed because there were like a couple pages where like not every character needed to talk, but they did, because that's just Bendis. And I don't think it bothered me as like, I know that bothered people in like New Avengers and Mighty Avengers, but the Avengers didn't have a hold on my heart the way that the X-Men do, and I didn't know those characters' voices well enough. I mean, like, when it came to New Avengers, like, a lot of those characters, Luke Cage and stuff like that, I'd never even read really anything with them previous to that, so Bendis' voice was the correct voice because I knew no different. But when it comes to the X-Men, it's I laugh because like my issue with some of this is the same issue that I have that not that I have, that other people have with like the MCU, where it's like, oh, it's too quippy, and like that doesn't bother me because the movies are they're for us, but they're also for general audience, so that, like, my sisters can enjoy them, just as much as I enjoy them, and I understand that. But this one, sort of, there were like moments of kind of like where that sort of took me out of it, where I was just like, okay, not everyone needs to like throw in their, comment. It just sort of felt like commentary, not actual like dialogue. And I'm going to wrap this up quickly because there's something else I'd like to talk about more than this one. But it's just sort of like, this is 10 issues, and looking back, this could have been 4 or 5. I still enjoyed it. Still holds a soft spot in my heart for what it is. But it was kind of interesting, where I was just like, could have tightened it up a bit. There was a lot of like, it just could have been tightened up. Okay, so we made the trip up to the toy store, and I picked up some things that I wanted. And so I will discuss why. December 7th, 1995, this X-Men Wrath of Apocalypse was released. And what this is issues 65, 66, 67, and 68 of X Factor, all kind of sandwiched together in one, like, thick bound. Like, it's great because it's not glossy pages, it's newsprint. Combines this 4 stories, which is, you know, the X Factor team, the original X-Men, going up against Apocalypse. And it is the story where baby Nathan gets sent into the future. In the Motor City Comic Con video, I talk briefly, probably not briefly, I probably talk about it too much, and at length. During this time period, the front of our house was a candy shop. And so as the aromas of Christmas candy filled the air, I huddled up next to our Christmas tree and our fireplace on December 7th, 1995, and I read for the first time this very story, because at the time I probably couldn't find or didn't know about these 4 issues of X Factor. And this is hilarious. So this is 4 fantastic Chris Claremont, Wilche Portacio art, and I got all 4 of these issues for $4.95. $4.95 for this thick bound 4 comic books all put together, and back matter. It even has the little, like, Apocalypse files on the characters, etc., etc. So, you know, you're talking like probably 130 pages for $4.99. And I'll just remind you that a good chunk of these are $4.99. So this is even cheaper than one comic today. Anyways, I digress. I read this not every year at Christmas time, but I definitely bust it out occasionally at this time of year, because it reminds me of that, like, I pedaled my bike up after school on December 7th, 1995, in the freezing cold to pick up my comics, saw this, thought it looked awesome, pedaled home, probably got a big hot chocolate, like I said, fire going, Christmas lights, and I get this great original X-Men take on Apocalypse. Like, it does not, in 1995, especially because I knew the Age of Apocalypse was coming, so this was a great, like, I just had Executioner song, you know, has a lot of good Apocalypse stuff in it. This was leading into, like, the Cyclops and Phoenix miniseries, which is great. You get introduced to, like, the Ascani sisterhood in this. The art's great. It's super fun. And this would have been my introduction to the Inhumans, which the other reason this popped up into my, like, oh, I should read that is I am obviously a big Marvel Legend collector. They are all over. I know you see a bunch of, that's kind of like my X-Men villains thing that I stand behind, but it's all over the place. So I picked up Black Bolt and Triton, and I picked up Medusa and Gorgon to go along with my already purchased Karnak and Crystal and Lockjaw, because in issue 67 of this story, they obviously wind up on the blue area of the moon, and, you know, the Inhumans get pulled into this. So me, as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, however old I was back then, this would have been my first introduction to the Inhumans. It was not Fantastic Four. It was this. It was this was my introduction to the Inhuman royal family. And so when I got the shipment notification for those toys, it sparked that, like, oh man, it's that time of year, Christmas tree's up, I should reread Wrath of Apocalypse. So these were released in, like, March, April, May, and June, I believe, are the street dates, not the cover dates, of 91. and then collected in '95 when I first read them. And when I met Jose Portacio, I had him sign it to me, like I do, because the story means a ton to me. It's one of my favorite Apocalypse stories. It's one of my favorite Cyclops stories, and so far I read the first two part of it. I was going to save the second two parts of it for tonight, and then followed up with this holiday issue. And I'm actually very curious to see how, because I have not read it. Last time I read it would have been before Henry was born, and I will admit, things hit me very differently now that he's around. There's like there's some movies and stuff that I used to like that I can't, like if something happens to a kid, man, it fucking does something different to me now. It's weird how quickly your like brain can be rewired to be like bothered by, not that I wasn't bothered before, but it's like I didn't have the like, this triggers a personal connect. So I'm very curious to see, you know, when Cyclops has to make his ultimate sacrifice, how that will hit me nowadays as compared to like back then. I was just like, yeah, get rid of the kid. I'm super excited for Cable to pop up. So, you know, that's what it is. Yeah, so let's see. I covered the new books on this Wednesday. Briefly covered Battle of the Atom. Talked about some of the toys that we picked up. Talked about one of, and seriously, if you have never read this X Factor storyline, it is the original 5. It is great art, great inks, great colors. I think that this is available on my comic shop. I think I saw it for like $6. Like you can find this, and it's like, this is the exact same paper stock that it was originally printed on. So give this a read. Like if you've never read those 4 issues or that storyline of the X-Men, it is absolutely worth it and still holds up immensely. So I think that about covers it. So let's see, barring anything else throwing this off the schedule, I know I talked in like one of the, I think the Motor City Comic Con video, I was like, oh, I got a Corner Box Classics coming up with the end of February 1982. Those books are on my nightstand and ready to be read, but I got sidetracked by diving into Battle of the Atom, and then like this was a time travel, Battle of the Atom was a time travel story where I was like, eh. So I was like, you know what? I should read a time travel story that I truly love. So I got a little bit sidetracked. So up next will be a Wednesday video. Oh, and it'll be the Wednesday ride before Thanksgiving, which means, yeah, I'm going to have to pivot a lot. This is going to be the time period where the schedule gets a little wonky just because of Christmas. So we will be back on Wednesday with a bike ride up to the comic book shop to pick up, looks like a light week from what I was researching for us, but it all looked like really good. Like it was like a light week, but it's a light week because it's not bogged down by a bunch of unnecessary X-Men Age of Revelation tie-ins. And then I will probably discuss my Thanksgiving comic book tradition, which you're like, and yes, I have a Thanksgiving comic book tradition that I read every year. So I will talk about that, and then I'll have a Corner Box Classics. So we will soon get through February of 1982. If you have been tagging along for this and you've liked and subscribed and engaged and commented and enjoy the aspect of this channel, which is more like what's my personal attachment to these issues and what's the story behind me and them, I appreciate it. I'm not really a reviewer. I would never want to be considered one, nor would I have like the, it's just not my cup of tea. I am much more concerned with like expressing my love for this. So if that is up your alley, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it to help grow the channel. Hit me up in the comments. I do love to, obviously, I'm at like 35 minutes right now. I do love to talk about this stuff, so have at it. I will never turn away comic book discussion. So yeah, thanks for tagging along with this, and I'm looking forward to the next ride we get. And yeah, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it, and I will see you on Wednesday. Have a good couple days. Bye.